In this part, we'll create the marker pen. Let me show it to you in the original render. It's the orange one. And of course, the best way to start with this is to start with another cylinder. So let's add one. Click Add, Mesh, and Cylinder. And again, we'll need to modify the number of segments or vertices here. And instead of 6, we'll need a little bit more. So let's set this to 24. So just enter 24 and enter. And you will see the cylinder is split into 24 parts right away. So right now we'll just need to rotate this on the x-axis 90 degrees. So let's select the rotation tool, grab the red circle, hold Control key and rotate 90 degrees like this. And let's enable the transform tool, so we have all the transforms available here, and let's grab it on the x-axis a little bit to move it aside so it doesn't get in the way. And right now we can look from the front view, so click this green dot here and let's switch to the edit mode. So click here, select edit mode. We will now scale this to something like a 0.1 on the Z and X axis. So we are basically reducing the diameter of the circle. And I want to do this right now in the edit mode. So before we scaled an object in the object mode and then applied the scale, because as I said before, it was not the true shape of the object, it was just the represented scale. But right now we are kind of modeling a new object here. So the scale I'm doing here is to define the shape of the object better. So that's why I'm skipping the scaling and applying the scale part, but I'm scaling right in the edit mode to affect the shape of the object itself. And since the last time we were in the edit mode, you can see the scale tool stayed active, because it's a little bit different for the object mode and the edit mode. So the scale was already active, so we can just grab this green square and scale this down, and you can hold Control and scale this to 0.1. And if you had a problem to set it to 0.1 like I did right here, remember you can always redefine these properties here in the model window in the bottom left corner. So let's click here and enter 0.1 and here as well. And right now I want to move this a little bit up so it sits on the background more. But now we won't do this in the edit mode, because if we were to move this up, let me show you, you can see the origin point of the object stays here. And it's the same principle that I've shown you with the letters. If the origin point is outside of the object, the rotation will behave differently and the scaling will behave differently and everything. So we don't want to do this in the edit mode. So go back to the object mode and grab this by the blue arrow and move this up. You can hold Control and move this 0.1 right away. And now we can rotate the view. So click and hold the gizmo here, rotate. We can maybe zoom in a little bit, reposition the screen. And now I think it should be a little bit longer. So again, go back to the edit mode, because we are now defining the shape of the object. So select the scale tool and scale it a little bit more on the y-axis like this. Yeah, this is like a final shape of the pen, and we can now refine it even further. Now let's go to the face select. So click here, maybe rotate this a little bit more. Click the front face, and we are going to insert this face, and there's a tool and you can find it here right under the extrude, and it says insert faces. And as always, the gizmo appears, so you can just click and hold and grab this inside a little bit to make this really subtle inset. And now we can switch to the extrude tool, but last time we used just extrude along normal, so it's still there. It wouldn't really matter here, but just to be safe here, let's switch back to the extrude region. So click and hold until the drop down appears and select extrude region and just drag the gizmo out like this. And we'll have to do some more insets and extrudes. So again, switch back to inset faces, do a really subtle inset here as well, and now switch back to the extrude, but instead of extruding outside, let's extrude inside the shape. Now one more inset, but really subtle. If you want to help yourself with that, just hold shift, so it goes more slowly. Release, and now switch back to extrude and extrude the tip. And now one more inset, maybe hold shift to be more precise. Switch back to extrude, extrude once, and extrude once again, and there'll be like the marker tip. And after that we can use the bevel tool. So switch to the bevel tool, we can have a closer look. So zoom in, move this a little bit, and drag the gizmo to make a simple bevel here, like that. Okay, so that'll be for the front of the marker. We can now rotate the view to the back, select the face here, and you saw right here how tedious it can be to switch these tools with the mouse all over again. And every one of these tools has its own shortcuts, and if you learn to use these shortcuts properly, it can really speed up your workflow and make your life easier here. So let's use the shortcut for inset, and that's just by pressing I. So let's switch back to the transform. We don't need to have the tool selected, and just press I and move the mouse to inset and click to confirm. And if you want to extrude, press E and extrude and confirm. So this way you could do as many insets and extrude as you want. Let me go back here, and without constantly switching on the toolbar. So that's very useful. And this is the place I would like to shift from using the Blender with purely mouse controls and UI, but move more into using the shortcuts. So we'll be manipulating the camera, the movement, the tools, switching the modes, basically everything with the keyboard shortcuts. I will be explaining at every steps what I'm doing, but I think it was really useful to do it like this up until this point, because right now if you have something you need to deal with, you can see how Blender's UI is very contextual and intuitive. So for example, if you need to do something with this face, you have the face options here. If you want to do something with vertex, you have the vertex menu. If you want to do something with the whole mesh, you have the mesh options here. And if you're in object mode, you have the menu for the whole object, for adding new object, for selecting. So basically everything can be done somewhere here, and it's very good that you basically got to see how the UI actually works. So you saw me right here switching from the edit mode to object mode. So yeah, let's switch that. We don't need to be in the edit mode right now. Let's rotate the camera. I will use the middle mouse button. And if you remember from the sushi episode, you are able to navigate very easily. You can rotate with the middle mouse button. By holding shift, you can move the camera around and zoom with the mouse wheel. So in this way you can navigate the viewport much more effectively. And right now I want to change this to smooth shading, because with the pencil it was very convenient to leave the shading flat, but right here I really want to show how this is a cylindrical object, so I don't want these faces to be visible here. So let's right click and click shade smooth, but again the same as with the ladders, you can see how the shading is a little bit off because Blender is trying to shade all those transitions between the faces, even the really sharp ones with the 90 degrees angles. And again, we need to fix that by enabling this auto smooth. So go here to the object data tab and enable auto smooth. We can leave it at 30 degrees, it'll be totally fine. And right now we have nice smooth marker. And one last thing to do is to position a camera a little bit like this. Maybe scale this a little bit. And we can cross-reference. And you can see how the marker is long, approximately like M and O letters. So we can scale it even more. If you think the scale or the thickness of the marker is a little bit off, you can go to front view, go into the edit mode, select all, and again scale like this. So it touches the ground here. And now if we go to the object mode, you can see it's much more thicker, maybe too much. So let me go back and scale it even more like this. So as you can see, I'm defining the shape of the object in the edit mode. And then when I'm satisfied with the object, I switch to the object mode, and then I can move it around. And now if I want to do uniform scale without redefining the object shape itself, I can do a scale and leave it like that. Let's move it a little bit. Okay, so I feel like this is pretty close. So let's leave it like this and move on to the next part.